I thought I'd give you a bit of a picture on who CoreLogic is, because a lot of people ask me. We don't have any consumer presence at all, and people come up to me and say, well, what are you? So I'm going to tell you what we are. We're a big leader in property data and analytics and data-enabled platform services. So nearly 2 billion revenue, 275 million profit. We spend $100 million on CapEx, nearly 5,000 employees. And really our segments are data analytics is about half, and transaction processing is the other half. We operate in 8 countries, 50,000 customers, and 1 million end users. Market cap 3.4 billion, which kind of makes me wish we're in consumer land, because with those kind of numbers, we'd probably be 10 billion market cap, but never mind. Based out of Irvine. I'm from Australia. Australia's about 10% of that number, Australia and New Zealand, and about 10% of the employees. So we're a meaningful part of the overall group now, and my role is really to look at sort of global innovation and to help with our international business development. So what do we do? So you can see here we do a lot. We're across real estate, we're across mortgage, we're across insurance, we're across financial services, and a little bit of consumer, mainly in the US. So across Australia, New Zealand, US, 70% of real estate customers use our systems. In the US, that's about 1 million end users. Actually, we do reach consumers because we power all the MLSs in the US, and we have a product called Go MLS, which has 250,000 agents with over 2 million users attached to it now. So we cover the entire ecosystem. We do mortgage processing, we do flood certification, loan origination platforms, and around in the US, we do tax and flood. In the US, if you don't pay your property taxes, the local body is ahead of you as a creditor. So if you're the mortgagee, you're in trouble. So we collect over $100 billion of loan payments every year, and out of that we pay the tax and flood money. So we think that's a big opportunity in emerging markets where there's not really any structure to do these kind of things. Insurance, all the natural hazard stuff, all the fire, all the storm surge modelling, all that kind of stuff. Big in financial services. All the major banks would use our AVMs, fraud detection tools. We have a small rental screening business in the US, and consumer, again, mainly focused on property management. We have apps that enable a private landlord to use the app, do a credit report, income verification, create documents, and so on. So very broad, 800 products at last count, and it's a beast. Part of my role is look at how we grow internationally. Technically, out of Australia, we run everything outside of the US. So, we're growing our UK business, and we're building sort of contacts and potential partners in multiple countries. And again, because our interest in the emerging markets is we can provide an end-to-end solution. So we can, where you've got problems with titling, you've got problems with taxes, all those things, we can build that as a whole sort of ecosystem. So that's not really very good colours, is it? We had a discussion. We sort of thought, well, look, let's have a look at this platform ecosystem and think about what the size of the prize would be. And we sort of thought, well, in terms of lead gen, you've got this, or if you look at Australia, there's about $1 billion of real estate advertising. There's probably about 650 million in portal land, and there's probably still 350 million in print. So that's only $1 billion. What about the rest? You got 6 billion in real estate commissions. That's a big number. And then all the sort of events that happen around you, moving house, whether you buy or rent, that's another 12 billion. So, we sort of thought, well, if we're creating a platform, how do you make money? And we sort of, ran some numbers, and this is sort of, a rough list, but if you kind of look at removalists, if you look at utility services, if you look at insurance renewals, depreciation reports, repairs and maintenance, pest inspections, building and title insurance and mortgages, that's a 12 billion market, and if you could get 10% of that, there's $1.4 billion up for grabs. So, given that all the mature markets are kind of running out of growth options, we sort of thought that's a prize that's worth going after. So, there's how many countries here, Simon? 30? 35. Okay, so it's just a useful exercise to sort of have a look at that and say, what's my ecosystem worth? And, is it worth me thinking in the future, how do I have a crack at this, incrementally? I think we've done this to death over 3 days. The big guys are on the journey. Zoopla, clearly probably the leader, investing a lot of money. Domain, buying up trade services hubs and talking about home loans and talking about all sorts of sort of different parts of the ecosystem there. REA, big partnership with National Bank, home improvement pages, I think News have invested in, and a fantastic little business called OneForm, which really sort of, there's more people move in and out of rental properties than they buy and sell houses. So I think there's a lot of upside in that one. And then, there are other people looking at this. So this little listed company in Australia called Urbanize, they kind of look at it and say, well, if you're in a big building, whether it's commercial or a strata managed building, you consume all these different things. So, how do you kind of make money? So they provide software. But if you look at how they want to monetize this, they're basically saying there's 2 times the annual revenue they could get from software by taking click fees on everything that goes around that ecosystem. So, smart people are really thinking about how they do this. Another little Australian company called Moving Hub. They've set themselves up as a software as a service platform that will give you a white label version to enable you to sort of get a removalist, to sort of change a utility company, to get a new phone plan, etc., with quite a nice sort of concierge service in the middle. So starting to get some traction. And so we kind of looked at it and he said, well, what would it be like, how do you build your own consumer ecosystem? So clearly as a portal, you've got your consumer portal. You're building your trust and you want to sort of start verifying and rating people and build transactions on the site. You've got your agent constituency where there's a whole lot of stuff that you do there. And then you've got all the suppliers on the other side. So how do you bring it all together? And you kind of look at the sample of services, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, but on the agent side, you've got a ton of stuff. And then on the vendor side, trying to take that frustration out of that move, which is a real, you've all been there and done it, it's a pain, to make all this stuff seamless and easy, have a high level of sort of customer sat, NPS score. There's a lot of opportunity to build out all these services. So then we look at it and say, well, how the heck do we build this? So we have this concept of a property services exchange, where we can link all these different suppliers into one sort of hub, if you like, and we can kind of manage that, point people to the right solutions and start the sort of process of making it as seamless as we can. Architecture-wise, it's a bit of a little geeky conversation. An API infrastructure and microservices, that architecture, you really should be thinking about how you build towards that, because that enables you to create these shared services APIs, the services connection APIs, and the supplier APIs. So become an API-first business. If you look at this slide, this is us in the US. There's just an enormous amount of stuff that we do for processing mortgages, for credit check, for fraud checks, for document checks, OCR scanning, the collateral risk, valuation, and so on. So we extend that platform out, and it gives us the ability to create workflow for all these other services. So, user management, scheduling, compliance, making sure people are licensed, referrals, ratings, all those kind of things. We kind of have an infrastructure that does that. What's a microservice? There it is. I'm not a geek, but I'm sure this presentation will be there to download. But get in it. It's the way of the future, service-orientated architecture at the end of the day. And what's an API? Well, that's just a way to make a call on something in an automatic way. Suck it and see, you know. Now, if you look at us, and we talk a lot about data, you know, this is just Australia, we have 4.5 billion decision points. And, you know, it runs a gamut of everything about property, everything about sort of valuations, everything about geospatial, everything about investor concentration, everything about user analytics, claims, direct marketing. So we basically spend, in Australia, nearly $20 million a year acquiring data, and then we bring it all together and, you know, create value for our customers. I think in the US it's about $100 million a year. Now that's a knife, right? That is a lot of data. Nobody has as much data as we have. You know, and sure, at the same time, you don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but you know, that is the difference. If you're meaningfully in the data game, you need to be meaningfully in the data game. And you know, kind of you know, we talked a bit over the last couple of days, you know, there's really not much new in the world. My first conference was, I worked for Telecom New Zealand, and in 1996, and I went to Internet World, 1996. That was pretty early, Internet World, and America Online was the hot thing, if anyone can remember America Online. And Steve Case and Ted Leonis's mantra was, content and community drives commerce. A year later, they came up with said, content, community, and context drives commerce. And that's what we're about. We're about creating the context with our content to drive commerce. So I thought I'd give you some sort of live use cases. This is a kind of data as a source of truth for pre-populating a valuer form. So we take all the attribute data, all the mapping, all the roofline measurements, all the photos, all the street view, the cadastral, that all sucks into a valuer who's doing a valuation. So, you know, bringing that data in to create a high-value product in a fairly sort of automated way. And we're an API-first company now. So I think at last count we had 350 companies in Australia basically connected to our API, and they range from banks to financial services companies to mortgage brokers to software companies, and there's people building apps. It's a fascinating ecosystem that's coming out. So it's all about liberating the data. A partner we're working with called Uno, with my little sandpit called On the House, you know, we're looking at how can we create that friction-free mortgage. So I've searched for a property, I'm researching a property, we'll use our AVM, we'll have a value on that property, we'll say here's what you can borrow on that property today. We're connected in real time to the bank's rules engines, and if we know a bank will lend at 85% on that AVM, we can pretty much say pre-approved, subject to credit, and we do a handoff electronically, goes into the Uno call centre, and away it goes. All sorts of other sort of stuff that we can do, affordability calculators and so on, but it's all about trying to make that sort of mortgage process friction-free. Electricity, you know, consumptions data is available now. You can get a dashboard for every property. You can link through to a utility switching service, a very contestable market in Australia. I think there's about a dozen providers now, and they're all, you know, fighting. I think there's about 700,000 people a year switch electricity to save $5 a month type thing. So that's a lot of people if you can get 10% of them, because the utility company is going to pay you the first month. No brainer. This is our insurance replacement cost calculator. So we have all our property data, attribute data that feeds the calculator. what we discovered after the Christchurch earthquake, 70% of New Zealand property is underinsured. Now, incrementally, to increase your insurance a few percent is only $5 a month. For that $5 a month is a huge amount of profit for the insurance company at the other end. So, we're seeing huge uptake of this in New Zealand because people want to de-risk themselves, and a great benefit for the insurance company that's building their premium base. Whoops. Where did I go? There it is. Our renovation calculator, that's available on realestate.com.au and our property value site. We collect data on pretty much the cost of every brick in every state in Australia. So we can pretty much very closely tell you a house in Victoria, if you wanted to add a bedroom, will cost you $50,000. We can then run our valuation algorithm over the top and say, if you do that, your house will be worth $100,000 more. Hey, bank, do you want to give this guy $50,000 to do this? Again, it's really building out that ecosystem. This is a new portal that we're doing. In Australia, it's an auction market. It's a hot market. What happens is people are going to auctions and they're buying the building and pest inspections at $1,000 a pop, missing out on the auction. So the state governments have had a lot of pushback against this because some people are spending $5,000 not to get a property. So we've built a register of every building and pest inspection. We've got pretty much the whole industry signed up now, and we can then sell those reports once, twice, 3, 4 times. The cost comes down. Final thoughts on sort of data and platform thinking. I like this one from Uber. If you really think about Uber, and Uber's just so over-Ubered, it's, probably becoming a term nobody wants to use anymore. But really, they have a dozen or so data sets, and their customer research really said that, people actually don't really care. Consumers don't talk in terms of innovation or disruption. That's only Malcolm Turnbull. So, what they see is improvements, improving their life, breakthroughs and evolution. So, they kind of look at this, through their peer networks and the lens of the brand that they're using. So your brand, needs to be part of this and, bring new things to the market in a nice, seamless way. So, some final thoughts. If you're getting into data and platforms, think about it architecturally. How do you liberate this stuff? There's a lot you're collecting now, but where is it? Is it in a shoebox under your data analyst's desk? Is it in as the guy you got contracting working from home? Where is it? And then how do you add insights to it? Do you build and integrate? Do you buy? Do you partner? I mean, our model is partnership. We're relatively invisible to the consumer, so we provide these services in most of our markets. And then how do you make sure your consumer has a great experience? Controlling the end-to-end experience is really important. The early lead sites are pretty terrible stakeholder management. Let's call it Lead Gen 1.0. And experience we've had is the consumer blames you because you're the brand who pointed them there. So they will phone your help desk and say, but I clicked on this on your site and they didn't call me back. So think about how you close that loop together. We're operating in the expectation economy now. And it's going to get competitive. We've got agent back office software. They're going to do it. We've got CRMs. They're going to do it. We've got property management platforms. They're going to do it. We've got forms providers. They're going to do it. Banks. They're going to do it because they want to help their customers have that pain-free mortgage. They're going to offer them, I'll give you a package, building and pest inspection. I'll give you the money up front for it. So all this is coming together as one big ecosystem, really, as we stand here and chat. Final, execution. Good ROI from any platform play is around creating an integrated and engaging customer experience. What we find is mature market sites tend to compromise good UX against the rivers of gold and display. So, I think there's a tension there between the sales guys for display and actually creating an experience that works for a consumer. And then think about personas for each part of the property life cycle. And there's, we do a lot of work around personas: buy, sell, rent, first home, invest, so on. So that's me.